Josip Broz Tito was more than a revolutionary leader. He was a geopolitical phenomenon. From the chaos of a multi-ethnic empire's collapse to the tumult of World War II, the rigid binaries of the Cold War, and finally the slow unraveling of a federation he held together by sheer force of personality, Tito was the living embodiment of 20th century Europe's contradictions. He was at once a communist and a nationalist, a dictator and a unifier, a champion of non-alignment and a cult of personality. Understanding Tito is essential to understanding modern Balkan history, Cold War dynamics, and the deep interplay between ideology and identity. Josip Broz was born on May 7, 1892 in the village of Kumrovec in what was then the Austro-Hungarian Empire, now Croatia. He was the seventh child in a modest family of mixed heritage. His father was a Croat and his mother was Slovene. This dual identity was emblematic of the multicultural complexities of the Balkans, and it would later inform his unique approach to Yugoslav nationalism. Broz left home early and trained as a machinist, becoming part of the industrial proletariat whose grievances would form the bedrock of early 20th century revolutionary movements. He worked across the empire and beyond, in Slovenia, Croatia, Bohemia and even Germany, encountering socialist ideas and organizing workers. With the outbreak of World War I, Tito was conscripted into the Austro-Hungarian army and sent to fight in Serbia and later Russia. In 1915, he was captured by Russian forces and interned as a prisoner of war. This twist of fate proved decisive. During his captivity, he witnessed the Russian Revolution and was radicalized by the Bolshevik uprising. His time in Russia exposed him to Marxist-Leninist ideology and revolutionary tactics, and he briefly joined the Red Guards during the Russian Civil War. Returning to the newly created Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, later Yugoslavia, in 1920, he joined the Communist Party of Yugoslavia, CPY. At the time, the CPY was a marginal force operating largely underground due to bans and crackdowns by the royalist government. But Tito's skills as an organizer and propagandist quickly earned him recognition. During the interwar period, Tito rose steadily within the communist movement, though often from behind the scenes. He took part in organizing strikes, disseminating Marxist literature, and rebuilding party networks disrupted by state repression. By the late 1920s and 1930s, the CPY was heavily influenced by Moscow and the Comintern, to which Tito remained loyal for much of his early career. His time abroad in Moscow, 1935 to 1936, solidified his ideological training and connected him to international communist circles. But it also introduced him to the paranoia of Stalinist purges. Many Yugoslav communists disappeared in Moscow during the Great Terror. Tito survived, either through prudence, luck, or a careful avoidance of factionalism. By 1937, after the purge of previous CPY leadership, Tito was appointed General Secretary of the party. His mission was to rebuild it from the ground up. He emphasized discipline, secrecy, and independence, a trait that would come to define his political legacy. When Nazi Germany invaded Yugoslavia in April 1941, the country quickly collapsed. The monarchy fled, and puppet regimes such as the Ustasha in Croatia emerged. Amid this chaos, Tito led the Yugoslav partisans in launching a broad-based resistance movement. The partisans were unique in being staunchly anti-fascist, multi-ethnic and communist-led. Tito's military genius and political charisma were instrumental in turning the partisans into the most effective resistance force in occupied Europe. They liberated territory, built parallel institutions and coordinated with Allied forces. After the Tehran Conference in 1943, the Allies shifted support from the royalist Chetniks to Tito's partisans. His legitimacy was now internationally recognized. In 1945, as the Nazis retreated, Tito's forces moved swiftly to assert control. Unlike in most of Eastern Europe, where Soviet troops installed communist governments, Yugoslavia was liberated largely by its own efforts. This distinction would have lasting consequences. With the war's end, Tito consolidated power. He abolished the monarchy, established the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia, and became both Prime Minister and Marshal of the Armed Forces. The new Yugoslavia was a federation of 6 republics: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro and Macedonia, and 2 autonomous provinces within Serbia, Vojvodina and Kosovo. Tito's government launched sweeping reform, nationalizing industry, redistributing land and suppressing political dissent. The regime was harsh and authoritarian, with show trials and labor camps such as Goliotok for political opponents. But it also aimed for modernization and industrialization. The defining moment of Tito's career came in 1948 when he broke with Josip Stalin. The split was not ideological. Tito remained a committed Marxist, but political. He resisted Stalin's attempts to subordinate Yugoslav foreign and domestic policy to Moscow's interests. Stalin accused Tito of nationalism and deviationism. The Cominform expelled Yugoslavia. Tito's defiance shocked the communist world. He survived multiple Soviet assassination attempts and intense international isolation, but he also turned adversity into opportunity. The West, eager to exploit divisions within the communist bloc, provided economic aid and diplomatic support. Yugoslavia became the first and only socialist country outside the Soviet orbit. In the 1950s, Yugoslavia embarked on a unique experiment: workers' self-management. Enterprises were run by elected workers' councils rather than state bureaucrats. While it never fully replaced centralized planning, it gave Yugoslav socialism a distinct identity. Ethnic tensions remained a constant undercurrent. Tito worked tirelessly to balance national representation within federal institutions. His slogan, Brotherhood and Unity, aimed to suppress nationalism in favor of Yugoslav identity. Yet his regime was also repressive. Dissidents, nationalists and religious leaders were often arrested or exiled. Still, Yugoslavia achieved relative prosperity. Compared to other socialist states, its citizens enjoyed freedom of movement, a vibrant cultural life and access to Western goods. Tito became a celebrity, often photographed with heads of state, actors and athletes. Tito's global influence peaked with the creation of the Non-Aligned Movement, or NAM. Together with Nehru, Nasser and Sukarno, he offered an alternative to Cold War polarization. The first NAM summit was held in Belgrade in 1961. Tito championed national sovereignty, anti-imperialism and peaceful coexistence. He visited over 70 countries and maintained diplomatic ties with both NATO and Warsaw Pact nations. He accepted aid from both superpowers but kept Yugoslavia militarily neutral. This balancing act gave Tito and Yugoslavia enormous prestige, especially in Africa, Asia and Latin America. He was seen as a statesman of principle and pragmatism, an image reinforced by his personal charisma and symbolic defiance of Stalinism. By the 1970s, Tito was aging and health problems took their toll. He signed the 1974 constitution, which further decentralized Yugoslavia's governance, granting more autonomy to republics and provinces. Critics argue this decision, meant to preserve balance, instead paved the way for fragmentation. Tito died on May 4, 1980, after complications from gangrene. His funeral was attended by over 100 world leaders, an unprecedented testament to his global stature. But with Tito gone, Yugoslavia's internal contradictions re-emerged. The strongman who had kept the nation's centrifugal forces in check was no longer there to hold the center. Tito remains a deeply polarizing figure. For some, he was a visionary who created a multicultural, independent and modern Yugoslavia. For others, he was a dictator who silenced opposition and postponed inevitable conflict. What's undeniable is that Tito left an indelible mark on the 20th century. He defied Stalin, inspired a global movement, and carved a unique path between East and West. Yet his greatest achievement, holding Yugoslavia together, proved tragically temporary. Josip Broz Tito was a paradox in a tailored suit. Revolutionary and ruler, nationalist and internationalist, tyrant and liberator, he embodied the contradictions of his era and region. Under his rule, Yugoslavia stood tall on the world stage, punching far above its weight in Cold War diplomacy. But it was also a house of cards, its unity dependent on Tito's personality and political skill. The fall of Yugoslavia after his death underscored how much of the country's cohesion was built on his singular authority. And yet the nostalgia for Tito-era stability persists, especially in contrast to the chaos that followed. In studying Tito, we confront the complexities of leadership, the fragility of multinational states, and the audacity of a man who dared to chart his own course in a world of empires and ideologies. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Blistering History.